So why do some people struggle to keep friends? Instead of looking at a shrinking social circle as some sort of personal failure or a deep flaw in your character, we really need to ask a different question. Social isolation is actually shaped by specific ways of thinking, acting, and interpreting the world around you that quietly make real relationships kind of difficult.
Psychology actually points to 5 specific underlying traits that create this whole dynamic. Let's dive right into how these invisible habits quietly make relationships tough, even for folks who genuinely wish they weren't alone. All right, number 1 is heightened self-monitoring. If you've ever found yourself staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. just agonizing over a casual conversation you had earlier, questioning literally every single sentence you said, yeah, you know exactly what this feels like. Your brain is constantly on overdrive, checking how others might be judging you. And while it might seem like you're just being thoughtful, it's actually a hyper-analytical habit. It slowly chips away at social connections, simply because you aren't actually present and enjoying the moment.
And this creates a really frustrating mismatch. See, from the outside, people pick up on that internal tension and they perceive you as distant or maybe even aloof. It builds this invisible wall. But the reality is completely different. You aren't trying to be distant at all, you're just trapped observing. Your mind is so hyper-focused on analyzing the people and the interaction itself that it literally forgets to just genuinely bond with them.
Now, all that intense internal observation naturally fuels our second trait, strong social awareness. This is heavily linked with high emotional intelligence. Basically, you just cannot tolerate fake behavior. You spot the insincerity, the forced smiles, the fake excitement, and all that unnecessary drama almost instantly. And once you see it, you absolutely can't unsee it. So in a world that's often driven by small talk and just seeking shallow approval, you flat out refuse to flatter people or act impressed just to fit in with the crowd.
But here's the tricky part about having that level of awareness. People often misread your quiet, observant nature. They perceive it as arrogance, pride, or like you think you're superior. But what's really happening? It's just uncomfortable authenticity and pure honesty. You're not trying to be disrespectful. You're simply being real. People often pull away, not because you're actually unfriendly, but because your highly authentic presence kind of exposes what feels performative in their own behavior.
Moving on to trait number 3. Because you value that stark honesty so much, you probably also practice emotional self-reliance. Now, most friendships grow through shared support, a bit of emotional dependence, regular reassurance, things like that. But if you have this trait, you're managing your emotions totally solo. You solve your own problems without ever asking for a hand. And honestly, it sounds like an incredible strength, doesn't it? But psychologically speaking, it actively works against the exact vulnerability you need to build meaningful friendships.
Think about it like this. By doing that, you inadvertently leave absolutely no room for anyone else to be important in your life. Meaningful relationships depend so heavily on vulnerability. If you never ask for support, if you never open up or reveal what you emotionally need, people eventually get the sense that they have zero role in your life. And slowly, they just stop trying. You're not intentionally pushing them away, but you become incredibly difficult to reach.
And this hyper-independence, it definitely spills over into how you interact with groups, leading us to trait number 4, low social conformity. You are an independent thinker. You absolutely refuse to chase trends. You don't just mimic the group, and there's no way you'll agree with something just for the sake of belonging. While everyone else is just laughing or blindly nodding along, you're sitting there examining the logic, speaking your mind, and carving your own path. Sure, that keeps your integrity completely intact, but it ultimately leaves you kind of isolated.
So the perception from the outside is that you're intentionally trying to be difficult, combative, or just flat out rebellious. But the clinical reality here is that this is simply how an independent mind works. You challenge the everyday assumptions that most people literally never think twice about. Now, people might respect you for that, for sure, but remember, respect doesn't always magically translate into friendship. Friendships usually grow through similarity, not difference.
All right, all of this culminates in our 5th trait, a psychological concept that a lot of people try to avoid admitting. It's called alexithymia. Basically, it's the difficulty of recognizing or expressing emotions in ways that other people can easily pick up on. Highly analytical individuals often just understand logic and reason so much better than emotional reciprocity. You might know exactly how to help a friend in a practical, hands-on way, but you might really struggle to emotionally connect or say those feelings out loud in the way they're expecting.
So what happens then? Well, the perception quickly becomes that you're cold, or that you just lack feelings. People might really admire your intelligence, but still feel completely emotionally disconnected from you. You might think, hey, just being dependable should be enough. But the reality is, most people need to feel emotionally understood, not just supported.
And the truth? You aren't lacking feelings at all. You genuinely care. You're just processing those emotions internally. The bummer is, by the time you're finally ready to share them, the moment has usually already passed.
So, when we step back and look at the big picture, we start to see how these friendships actually fade. It is almost never one massive, dramatic blowout. It's more like death by 1,000 cuts, through tiny, repeated habits. The delayed replies, the limited emotional expression, refusing to put on a mask just to fit in. Basically, you became too aware, too independent, and way too analytical for a world that's heavily driven by emotional impulses.
And this brings us to a really powerful paradigm shift. Having few friends does not mean something is fundamentally broken or wrong with you. It may simply mean your mind places honesty above acceptance. You can't fake a genuine connection, and you refuse to water yourself down just to belong. You often stand alone, not because nobody understands you, but because very few people truly relate to you on that level.
So, the absolute most important question I want you to take away today is this. Will you stop asking, why don't I have friends, and start really understanding your own mind? Because once you see how your specific personality shapes your relationships, you'll realize that not everyone is even capable of connecting with someone like you. Keep questioning things, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.